lot of people at Disneyland, one or the other. I made a few notes that I'll probably have to reference, but I'll just let you guys know that on behalf of Sony and my esteemed panelists, I'm Tyler Barth and thrilled to be here. My NAMM journey started in 2008. I ran biz dev, marketing, and artist relations for a little company called Blue Microphones. Following Blue Microphones, I was a co-founder of the Esquire House Music Studio, which ultimately went into the wonderful House of Rock, which is where actually I got a lot of time with a couple of these guys, three of the four. Nikki and I are new friends. And then ultimately, after a lot of boring stuff, I met Sony and co-founded a very special experience called the Immersive Creator Experience with my boy Ross Caravati and the associated team that will be filling in shortly. Guys, I mean, let's just say what we mean here, and that is that the music business is changing pretty dramatically. In 1957, around 70 years ago, 65, we had an introduction to two-channel audio. That was also known as stereo. And, you know, I want to make a point that stereo is wonderful. Even 65 years later, it is really spectacular. And that journey of stereo is unbelievable. If you go back to 1957, and we have the technological revolution that we've had, it's kind of hard to believe that we're still listening to the same audio, right? About 34 years later, as I look at Avid right now, the digital audio workstation was introduced to the market. And why is that relevant? Well, I'll tell you why. It changed music forever. It took 34 years to change music forever. We now actually have 4 trillion songs that are available thanks to the digital audio workstation, Pro Tools, and the other associated DAWs, which is pretty wild to think about. In fact, just this last year, there were 112,000 tracks for the first 6 months of the year a day that went up to the DSPs, which is kind of overwhelming when you think about the year prior, 40 million songs went up to the DSPs. So how do you cut through the noise? Like, what is actually going to take shape to cut through the noise that allows us to hear our songs wherever that may be? So we're going to talk about that today. And before we talk about it, for those who are unfamiliar with the amazing panelists that I have up here, first off, I'm humbled and thrilled to be able to talk to these guys. We decided there'd be 2 rules, okay? The 2 rules are, if we're not having fun, we just walk off the stage. That's one rule. The other rule is, if anybody here has any questions, we will stop what we're doing to answer those questions. And if you have a question, I want you to come up stage right for me, as Todd informed me. There's a lot, obviously, that I'm not going to read here, but I think it's important that we accurately tell you about these amazing human beings up here who have done 3-4 decades worth of work. Next to me on my left, longtime friend Scott Spock. He's been a chart-topping songwriter, music producer, car designer, and former actuary. He's known for being the founding member of the pop writing and production team The Matrix, who crafted the pop rock sound of the early 2000s. Spock has written and produced hit singles that have reached #1 worldwide. He's best known for his songs with Avril Lavigne, Korn, Hilary Duff, Shakira, Jason Mraz, David Bowie, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, Liz Phair, Busted, and Rihanna. He's got 7 Grammy nominations, including Songwriter of the Year and Producer of the Year. I mean, the list goes on and on. The thing that Scott and I recently connected on was that he's also known for designing the Maximus, the ultimate charger, which is a car that's hand-built, redesigned, all-metal 1968 Dodge Charger that has over 3,000 horsepower. So anybody that has any clue on how fast that is, that's even faster than these EV cars that are hitting the market right now. It was also featured in an end scene of Fast and Furious 7. For those who may be unfamiliar with the Fast and Furious, come see me after. You've been sent to the principal. Thank you, Scott, for being here. Love my notes. All right, Nikki, you're up next.
What's up?
God bless you. One of the most charming females I've known to date, or I've met to date. One of the biggest smiles as well. She also is extremely talented with two-time Grammy-nominated singer, songwriter, producer. She's written songs and running her own Pro Tools sessions since sixth grade. She was signed to Epic Records shortly thereafter, and since spent the majority of her time in studios all over LA developing her skill in some of pop music's greatest producers and songwriters. Not to age her, doesn't look a day older than 20, but over her last 15 years, the Southern California native is now well known within the industry for her powerfully emotive voice, her ability to craft lyrics that touch people across the spectrum, and her seasoned instincts for vocal production. Some of her recent releases include Nas, Zayn, JoJo, David Guetta, and Christina Aguilera. Nikki is passionate and advocating for creatives, prioritizing healthy artist development and education, and creating environments that allow for true authenticity and vulnerability to shine. Grammy-nominated Best Rap Album for Nas, Life is Good. Grammy-nominated Best R&B Album for Mia, Smooth Jones. And honestly, there's about 30 more bullet points. I told you I wasn't going to read it all.
Sorry,
Now,
Tuller.
thankfully, Blumpy, Mike Tuller, took this. I said, give me your short bio. He's probably got the longest bio. But Mike Tuller is a film, TV composer, producer, programmer, engineer whose work includes Oscar, Emmy, Golden Globe, and Grammy Award-winning projects, and the artists ranging from Nine Inch Nails, Eminem, Eric Clapton. Maybe a few artists you guys have heard of.
I have an AVN too.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, like I said, if we're not joking today, then this is not the panel I want to be your host.
He knew what that was.
That's true. Damn right I did. All right, so Mert was last to send me his bio, so I have to read my chicken scratch on his bio. Thank you, Mert, who's been a producer, engineer, mixer, and founder of The Record House, works with artists producing, mixing albums as well, doing music and audio production for film and TV. As a very early adopter of immersive audio, Mert has been mixing in Atmos and Sony 360 for the past 4 years, amassing 450 songs in immersive formats for artists like Alt J, Major Lazer, St. Vincent, Sugar Rose, Black Pumas, and the list goes on and on. So I've now done the intros. We're going to talk a little bit about the journey of song making. And one thing that I think is very clear, other than my chicken scratch, is that the journey of song making begins differently with everybody. As I look at it, all of you, hopefully at one point in your life you've had a chance to write a song or be a part of the song process, maybe even just to be an inspiration for somebody to write a song, like Taylor Swift likes to write about everything going on in her life. Travis Kelce will definitely have a few songs about him. So anyway, as we go back into the journey of song making and also NAMM of last year, Scott sat to my left in a panel, and one thing that we agreed on is that we can't come back and say the same thing as we did last year. Something needs to actually happen. And Scott was very new to immersive audio. Scott had never worked in 360 reality audio. And, you know, earlier this week we had lunch, and we sort of reflected back on the last 9 months because for those who don't know, NAMM was in April last year, not January, which it's accustomed to be. So I'm done talking. I'm just going to I'm going to ask some questions. So Scott, I want you to kick us off right now, and I think we're going to let that microphone roam. Tell us a little bit of the difference between 360 and the other immersive formats, and what deal did we sort of make each other in the conversation last April to where we are 9 months later today?
Well, first I want to say, Tyler, thanks to Tyler for putting all this together, and of course Sony for making all this happen. I mean, this is a real big deal. Tyler really has an art, has mastered the art of putting things together in such a beautiful way. To answer your question, the thing about immersive audio, which you're right, it's new to me, and from a creative standpoint, you know, where I come from as a writer and producer, I've always looked at things and said to myself, you know, what's interesting about this, and how is it different from something else? And this is such a groundbreaking moment, I feel, in history when it comes to music making in particular. And it's not like immersive audio is just brand new. It's not. I mean, if you really look back in history, you can go back to 1940, actually, when Walt Disney said, hey, I've got this movie Fantasia, and let's put some speakers in the back of the theater to give you more of a surround kind of effect, you know. And then, of course, it evolved into, you know, what it is now for mostly movies and games. But what you're not really hearing is music being done for surround. It's not being thought of that way. It's not technically even being considered when you start a project. Like if I sit down, I'll call up a piano, or I'll call up a drum set or something, and I'll start putting some music together. But I'm not thinking of the space. And I think this was the first, when I first was experienced the whole concept of 360 was here at NAMM. They played me something and they said, oh, wow, you know, it's like, it's not just, you know, going to a movie theater and considering you're in a long rectangle, and now you're hearing things in front of you and you're hearing things kind of behind you. It was a whole concept of really 360 is like a sphere. You're like up and down and around and left and right and all the things. And it really like excited me beyond belief. I just couldn't believe it. And what I want to say is, you know, as I've gotten into this and I started working with it, there have been questions like, well, how is this different? What is Sony doing that's really different from what is already there? What has been there? What's going on in games? What's going on in movies and all that stuff? And I really do feel that, and as I look at everybody here I know has a really deep conscientiousness when it comes to details. That's why you're musicians. That's why you're in this business. You're a mixer, you're a producer, you're a bass player, a singer, you're whatever. You have a very conscious effort to identify details in what you do. And it's those details that make things interesting. Like anybody can sit and hum a song and play a song, but it's what we really focus into as creators. And when now you can have the ability to take these details and create an atmospheric, that's the wrong word, a very 360 degree kind of environment to create in, it really gives you the most ability to think outside the box. And that's what happened to me. Like he said, we're going to set you up with the software, and we want you to think outside the box for a second. And this software has been, I believe, something that triggered inside of me the ability to create something new. And I've been in the business a long time, and there have been disruptive technologies that have come out that have changed the business, like Pro Tools. You know, I was using it when it was Sound Tools. It was 2 tracks. So that's how old I am. But the point of it is here is is this is coming out and it's different. It's different from everything else that's out there for movies and games in the fact that you can now look at the sphere and you can like think about the music from a spherical point. You can put things in places and you can think of ideas that are not just bound by stereo compression. You know, I have this, we were just joking about this a second ago. I have this rule when I'm in the creation mode. I'm like making a song, I'm playing a piano, I've got the beat, now it's starting to come along, I lay down a scratch vocal, everything's grooving, and it's just feeling like, what's going on? It's what I call my 8 dB moment. I grab all the faders and I pull it down 8 dB, and now things open up a little bit, right? With this, you've got, everything's all open to begin with. You've got this, nothing's restricting you from the creative process. And I really feel that this tool, which all of us as creators, my point earlier, is we have this battle inside of our head where we deal with creative flow and we have technology. And when the technology limits the creative flow, it messes things up. And that's where this software, this 360 VME software, as you see demoed right now, it gives you an interface and a tool to interface within the creative flow. It allows that to happen without going, okay, I need to set up all these faders and I need to think about what goes to this bus and I got to go all these things. No, it's there, it's in front of you, and now you're just being creative within a space. Instead of just, I'm creative with my instrument, I'm creative with the vocals, I'm creative with compression, delays, reverbs, all that stuff. No. You're creative within the space right away, and that allows you to think of music differently. And I think this is a groundbreaking moment because I think we're about to see Sony move an industry. And what do I mean by that? I think Pro Tools back in the day, they came out and they moved an industry on how things were recorded. We all recorded to tape. Now things were recorded in your bedroom. They moved the industry to become what it is now. This you're going to see is identify as the moment in history when things changed. You're going to go from 4 trillion stereo mixes, and that's going to end up the legacy department in all of the music departments worldwide. And the rest, those music departments are all going to be immersive audio, because this is where we're going. And if you really want to get out there and make your stuff happen, now's the time to jump in on this. Because there's not too many tracks out there that are immersive, but if you're going to make it, this is the place and this is the time to jump in. And now the other guys can explain the technical differences, but from a creative standpoint, I'm sold on this.
I mean, nobody could say it better than a guy that's been living and breathing this for the last 9 months. We've been preparing, a lot to be able to put this out into the wilderness. So you guys might see actually the slideshow going. This is the journey of our immersive creator experience. You'll see many images featuring these guys. I'm going to say one thing, and then Scott's going to answer the question as to why is this crew up here, right? I'm a numbers guy. We went actually through the history of 1957, introduction to stereo. 1991, introduction to the DAW. Thank you, Pro Tools. And then, ironically, that was 33 years, 34 years between those two. And where are we 33, 34 years later? I mean, I don't know. You guys do the math, but it's time for a revolution. The same way Pro Tools did that, and the same way that 2-channel audio revolutionized everything. So, I don't know, I guess we can talk about it at the end, but you guys want to make some money, this is what you want to be doing right now in immersive. All right, Scott, tell the story. Like, why this crew?
Okay.
And what did you do?
Well, when Tyler approached me and he said, "Hey, we're gonna do this creative experience out at Elsewhere, which is this place in Topanga Canyon, as you see on the slides. It was a 37-acre place, and he said we're gonna really just open it up and we're gonna record, and we want to kind of get a sense of what immersive can be capable of from a songwriting standpoint, And I thought, I went round and round, in my head. So, you get all these different instruments and have, orchestras set up in different parts of the room or even outside, or do all the things, And I thought, what better sells a technology. What better represents anything in history other than the human voice? And I said to myself, I want to build something around just one of the best voices I've ever heard in my life. And I first of all, I want to say something. I've had the pleasure and the honor to work with some of the best people, the best people in the music industry over the last 25 years of my life. I really have. I've worked with the best. And I have a Rolodex that's huge. And in the top 1% of my Rolodex are these guys' names. And so I called the best of the best. And I was so honored when they said, please work with me on this. This is something brand new. I don't know what's going to become of it, but it's going to be something that's going to change your life. And Blumpy said no and walked away. And no, he didn't. He was like, yeah, let's do it. And I was so happy about that. And I called, I was like, I knew in my head the voice I was hearing, the perfect voice for this. And it was Nikki. And I hadn't talked to her for a minute. And I called her on the phone and I said, look, okay, you need to get in your car and drive out to the middle of the hills in Topanga and meet me there. And there was a little apprehension, like, you know, you're going to take me to the hills where Charles Manson was? Okay. That's like, but no, in a gypsy wagon, right. And, but she agreed to come and we got to work on this song. So I'll turn it over to somebody to.
Yeah, so I know it's been the Scott and Tyler show. We're about to surrender that to the other three incredible panelists here. But so I want to dig into, we're now at Elsewhere at the end of November. Scott's prepped a track. Blumpy arrives from Vegas. And Blumpy, walk us through the workflow. What was kind of the idea of what you were doing? And don't worry, this goes to us playing the track that they actually recorded in 360 from inception. But go ahead, Blumpy. Tell us a little bit about the workflow and mixing it.
It was cold. It was really cold. I couldn't find the heater. I froze to death that night. There was a heater in the corner. I was just too stupid to turn it on. But it was fantastic. I loved that place. It was a great experience. Was I in a circus? What they put me in like a circus cage for like, what was that? It was great. Yeah, it was fantastic. you know, way back in the day when you were talking about DAWs and all that, and once the mix bus system for Pro Tools came out, this is Digidesign before Avid, we were able to finally record outside of a studio. You could do a professional recording outside of the studio, and that was one of the great things about Elsewhere, is that it was a great vibey place to work. What was the original question? I sort of went off on a tangent there, but
you were focused on a circus.
Yes.
No, the question, Blumpy, was you ultimately recorded this, but how did you record it a little bit differently?
That one.
Knowing
question.
that you were working with the entire 360.
Everything you record, you generally everybody records in stereo, even if it's a mono track, and I don't know why, because if it's a stereo track, you record it in stereo, but if you're recording for 360, you really want to be thinking in that world. And most DAWs still don't work in that way, and that's why you need software that makes you think in that way. But it's almost, you're almost crippling yourself by working with stereo tracks. You want to think of things where they're going to be placed versus, you know, just left, right, and all the stereo. You know, everybody who mixes in stereo, you know the problem. You want to make a big, wide mix because you're limited to those two channels. So you're trying to think outside the speakers as much as possible. Whereas with this, you don't need to think about that. It's a different thing. So you're not doing tricks to make it bigger and wider. It's already wide. It's surrounding you. So when you're recording, you generally think in terms of, and Scott is, you know, had all of this laid out in his head and on paper and emails and text messages and smoke signals and whips and cracks, and this is how I want it to be. And so we laid out everything the way he envisioned it. And that's, generally speaking, with a vocal, you're going to record that in mono, and when it comes to reverb, you want to fill up the space, and you're thinking of the space, as Scott was saying, as opposed to just the two speakers. So you want to record that way. You want to record with that in mind, because the last thing in the world you want, left, you take a stereo mix and there's the left channel, here's the right channel, I'll put the left channel there for another thing and a right channel there, and it's just going to sound like a mess. So you generally think in terms of where you're putting things. The other thing that you don't need to think about so much when you're mixing with such a large amount of speakers is masking. In 2 channels, you're going to have a lot of masking, and you spend all of your time recording to make things sound big, and you spend $10,000 on a microphone, $4,000 on a mic pre, and you want to make something sound as big as possible, and then 120 tracks in, you got to mix, and now you're just making everything thinner and smaller to fit in 2 speakers. This, you don't need to think about that as much. Obviously if things are overlapping, but you've got a whole world of speakers around you, and you don't need to worry so much about that.
So Nikki, you get a call, or actually, why don't you walk us through how Scott got back in touch with you?
I mean, it's literally what he said. He called me and he said, so do you want to come stay at a gypsy wagon in the middle of nowhere in Topeka Canyon? And I'm like, hi, Scott. Good to hear from you after 10 years, first of all. But also, sure, let's do it. What are we doing? Because, I mean, if you don't know Scott Spock, or you missed the intro, he's just one of the most prolific songwriter-producers of our generation. So of course, I said yes, and Topanga Canyon is just a beautiful remote place. I hate feeling like I'm in LA when I'm writing records. I don't know about you guys, but I hate writing in LA. I have to go other places to get outside of just the oversaturation of the city. So I moved to Joshua Tree last year, for instance. So Topanga sounded perfect. So I show up, pull in. There are indeed gypsy wagons off to the side, so I'm like, it's legit. I'm not going to get murdered out here. Yeah, he explained this software to me, which was just mind-blowing, and told me basically we're working for this 360 software thing. We're going to try to write a song from inception with that in mind. So it's just really got my wheels turning. I love harmonies. I'm a big layerer. I love to add harmonies, love to add different parts and things that kind of juxtapose each other. And it's tough to do that. You can have all these beautiful parts, and then you go to mix and you realize there's a lot of stuff stepping on each other. You have to bring stuff down to where you don't even get to feel or hear the intricacies of the notes that are changing underneath. And so I think the idea of being able to play with this massive space that you did not have before, going from 2D to 3D, quite literally, and having this entire sphere to work with as a vocalist and as a vocal producer, just made me think about making music in a completely different way. So I get there, and they've got this 13.2 speaker system set up. And they're like, we're going to get you fitted for your headphones to do the 360 software. So I put on these headphones, and they start playing the test music, and I pulled it off and I said, you're still playing it in the house? And he said, no, it's in your headphones. So just the software alone that Sony's coming out with right now is just completely mind-blowing. And yeah, I think as a creator, it just completely expands the way that you think about writing music, especially if you take it from inception, not just from the mix level forward, but from actually writing the music. So you'll get to hear something that we all got to work on together. And in a minute, yeah. I don't want to take over the host duties, but yeah, go ahead.
Kevin, we're going to need you to cue this. Kevin, I told Kevin it was going to be like 15 minutes in, and we're about a half hour in, so sorry, buddy. All right, so what we're going to play here, Scott, why don't you introduce what we're listening to, and then Matt, I'm going to ask you afterward about the mixing process and what needs to be thought of as we hear a final piece in the case that we're going to be listening right now. So if you guys want to come closer, you guys are going to hear an actual 360 mix that they created from inception. So you'll want to come a little bit in, make sure you have the back speakers. So make a friend next to each other, fill it in right here, and you'll get to hear what Scott will tell you what you're about to listen to.
Yeah, so this was, the concept of the song was, I wanted a human voice to to a very sensual experience, so you would be captivated by what the software could do. So the song's called Around, and the whole concept is based around this wonderful woman who comes into the room and starts to be sensuous with you and lures you into the experience of where you are. And you'll hear her move around you. You'll hear all of the things. She'll push you to the ground. She'll lift you up. She'll do all the things that you would hope a beautiful woman would do to you. But in this, it's the metaphor that that what the software is doing for you, and the experience is there. And we had a lot of fun doing this, and we hope you enjoyed.
And this is the literal debut of the track, so you guys can hear it here first. We're going to get off the stage so you guys can hear it clearly. Leave the mic there, Scott. We'll be joining you back on stage in 2 seconds. No, just get off, Blumpy. I mean, literally, get off. If this is the inception of 360, imagine where we're going to be 33 years later, guys. This is legitimately one of the most fun gigs in the world when I get to work with these amazing artists that clearly have a vision, and it was literally just 9 months of pre-production, right, Scott? Well, yeah, that's actually very true. So the journey of that song started 9 months ago, whether Scott knew that or not. All right, so I've had the pleasure of working with Matt Ozcan, our Turkish genius over there. He's the immersive mixer god. I don't know. I mean, we know Serbian Guinea did like 2,000 mixes this year, but not all in 360 or Atmos. Matt, you've done close to 500 immersive mixes. When you listen to a track like this, and you think about what the future of mixing looks like, walk us through sort of maybe a specific instance that's specific to maybe an Alt J or Black Puma's mix that you did, and then we'll circle back to the immersive creator experience and everything. I just want you to have the platform to talk specifically about what you've seen over the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, mixing and immersive is always fun. I was one of the early ones to set up an Atmos room and start working in that format, and now doing all of this with these beautiful people. I think, as we're saying, just thinking about immersive from inception is great. And whenever I was doing the Atmos mixes, even from stereo, I was one of those people that I wanted to push the boundaries. I didn't want to just like stay in the stereo box of like, okay, well, this is the stereo mix, and let's stay true to that or close to that as possible. The stereo mix exists. You can listen to that anywhere. Let's create this immersive experience for the listener that they can really be excited to like get in and listen to. I think this is a new format, and it's good to push boundaries and blow shit up in the meantime. Why not? Creating this from inception, from a recording mixing standpoint. I mean, you guys heard all of the harmonies. Like if I'm doing like a up mix from a stereo mix, sometimes like I'll get background vocal stems, and it's just a stereo stem with all of the vocals in it, and there's like a limitation to the mix that I can do with that. And if the artist is creating the harmonies with this in mind, and like the stacks and wherever they can go, it's obviously a more compelling listening experience for the consumer as well. I think it gives all of the artists, the creators, more playground. Whenever artists come in and listen to the mixes that I do at the studio, they're always inspired to do like, well, I can write an arrangement, I can actually compose with this in mind. Like I have this whole like 3D, even like up and down soundscape. Like let me put the low frequencies there, their mids, highs, and like do an arrangement that way. I want to do a swirl and a drop that compels the listener. So I think it's a great thing to start with, immersive from the get-go. Don't think of it like, oh, it's something that I need to do because my label wants an Atmos mix for whatever. Start creating a compelling listening experience for the listener. Like what Pink Floyd and all of those guys were doing in the 70s. They were pushing boundaries in a stereo format with everything they had. Now we have so much incredible tools. Like the floor is filled with all of these things, and it's sometimes tough to get creative because there's like so much available to you, but like try to do more creative things and do them from the start. Don't just leave it at the end, and don't think of it as like oh, this is just a little marketing thing. Like do the best musical experience that you can for your fans and listeners.
Well done. I like the way you talk about it, because you guys are experiencing here in 2024, I think the tipping point of stereo will never be ignored. You have 4 trillion tracks. There's no way to convert the existing tracks entirely to 360 without some machine help, and we don't need to talk about that. But what I'm really want to get at now that we've played the track, I mean, for the creators of the track, being able to listen to the track back with people and like feeling it in a 13.2 environment. Nikki, how did that make you feel?
It's awesome. It's amazing. Like I said, I feel like oftentimes with a mix, you go in and you're in the room and you have this intention to hear the small, intricate detail. And then you hear it in an environment like this or out where there's crowd noise or other bands playing next to you. You don't pick up on any of that stuff. So just having the actual space to create that environment and to pick up on those details, hearing it in here, even though it's loud as shit down here, being able to hear it moving around you in this space it's an experience. It's a new experience, which is important. Yeah.
So you mentioned environment. I called Blumpy a couple months ago and I said, you live in Vegas. We should probably go to the Sphere show. You know, you see you too. So, you know, from a recording engineer, producer, mixer, film and TV composer standpoint, what does the future of live music look like? And, you know, how far away are we from hearing Nikki's song live in the way that you just heard it?
The Sphere was great. We went to the Sphere. It was a great show. And I want to point out something that there's a lot of immersive audio that you're seeing here today. And the one thing that separates this from the other technologies is the other ones are a dome. You're thinking in a plane and everything above and behind you and in front of you, whereas this has low-fire speakers. It's surrounds. It's literally 360 or 316, two different planes. But you get the idea. It's the Sphere was that experience, and you know, obviously for live you can't have live microphones with a forward-facing speaker, but there was a lot of atmosphere behind there, and the whole show is about surrounding you, and to have a recorded format that allows you to do that is amazing, and you could you know, and theoretically in the future do this with live using this technology.
Has anybody seen you two at the Sphere, just by a show of hands? Okay, so I know it's expensive. I know it's geographically not really 10-minute drive, but I'm just going to say I've never been so blown away. I went in there with high hopes. It completely, I mean, I've seen 3,000 live music shows. I don't know if I'm going to see another live show where I'm not thinking about, boy, it would be cool if I saw it at the Sphere. It really is and delivers on every single bullet point you can think about when you see a live show.
It's an amazing experience.
So when I see that, and we're taking stereo files to the Sphere, imagine taking Immersive to the Sphere. I mean, it's immersive in the sense that we know U2 songs as recorded in stereo with maybe a little, you know, new mix to it. But it's a really, really exciting time. You guys, you want to make some money? You want to get people's attention? Immersive is the only way. Otherwise, you got to cut through the 4 trillion tracks that exist out there. And honestly, I don't want to have to do that. That costs money. That costs luck. You're literally just hitting your head against the wall trying to figure out, you know, what do I do? I can't break the mold. My song sounds better than Taylor Swift, but I don't have Taylor Swift's fan base. So now what we want to do in sort of a conjunction with Sony is create immersive environments to inspire great tracks, immersive in 360, which is, again, for those that are a little later showed up, the slideshow is essentially what we were able to pull off at the end of November. All 4 of these guys and another 96 Grammy Award-winning artists or nominated artists came out in support to say, you know what? It takes a village. These one-off projects don't do anything for us. It really takes a village. It takes this village right here, but we all have to agree and look at each other in the face. From Johan Carlson and Brian Malouf to Manny Marroquin, all these guys showed up to say, you know what? We're supporting this. Michael Romanowski, who was here earlier today, every single person agreed. It's time. 34 years later. Blumpy, what do you want to say?
It takes drugs too.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of the immersive creator experience, that was an idea, you know, Tyler and I worked on the House of Rock project together almost a decade ago, and the idea of like build it and they will come is create a cool environment, give the artists and the producers the tools, don't force anything on them, just create a cool environment and let them create, and that we had so many, besides the track that we did with Nikki, there was so many other great tracks that came out of it. And everybody, again, we provided them the tools, the microphones, the headphones, the 360 tools, and they, you know, nobody wanted to leave. Like, we were up there until like 6 in the morning every day until like the week was done, and yeah, it was a great time. So encourage everyone to, you know, get out there and try these tools, and you don't have to be in a multi-million-dollar studio to do it. Go somewhere that inspires you and create in that space and come up with ideas there.
Let's talk about the headphones. For those who don't have a 13.2 environment to create in, a studio, Scott, walk me through, what is virtual mixing environment?
So this is the other thing that I got really excited about is when they gave me the software and they gave me the headphones, which are incredible. I've obviously have a lot of different types of headphones, and obviously the workhorses that I use are Sony's in the studio. So they're excited to try a brand new pair, but they sound great. But beyond that, for me, it's like, okay, am I going to set up 13 speakers here? And then no, I'm not. And being creative, I've done in the past 2 or 3 years, I've done most of my creative work either in a hotel or at somebody's house or working on something on my laptop, you know. And it's funny because I've got I've got like 25 years worth of gear going back to, you know, the things that are so vintage that are sitting there, and I can't let them go because I love them and they're all great. But I have so much power on my laptop that it's crazy, and I can do so much stuff. But most importantly, now I've got a full experience of the room that I was in that I know. So that if you can get measured for rooms that you know, and now I can sit anywhere and be mixing in the room that I'm comfortable with through VME. And plus I'm doing this with 360, you know, object placement, and it's just incredible. I mean, it blows my mind the power that I have in front of me and what I'm able to do and how comfortable I am to wear these headphones for an extended period of time, because I just asked both these guys, like, what's the ratio being, you know, specifically mixing is their main things. Like, how long are you on headphones, you know? And as a creator, it's like sometimes I'm spending a lot of time at a piano or whatever, and then I go to my tools and I start putting the ideas down. I put headphones on, I'm recording and whatever, and I'm in and out, and I'm off and on, and I'll have speakers going if I'm in a room with speakers. But ideally, I'm never drawn to the fact of working through headphones because it's just I'm playing my instruments. But now I'm drawn to it because of the environment. And now I'm drawn to it because now I'm always in a room that I'm familiar with. And it's just exciting for me to be in that position and not have to worry, I got to get across town before I can do this part of it or whatever. No, I can do it right there. And it's just blowing my mind.
Blumpy, this is all you. I mean, you mixed the track. How did you mix the track? I mean,
Let me explain what VME is for.
yeah, that's good.
So
Okay.
They put a babble fish in your ear, and they measure you in the room, and they record that, and they measure you with the headphones. And then you go back to your studio, and you have that studio in your headphones. So how it sounds, if you mix in headphones, and those are fantastic headphones, the Sony, the MD ones. I love the MDRs, but these are even better. Anyway, you take it back to your studio and you can hear the air. And anybody who's ever mixed in headphones versus speakers, you know the speakers generally the air pushing will give you a more accurate mix. Well, if you can replicate that in headphones, you can get a better mix. And that's what they did. They measure you and that's what VME does. It replicates the room in your headphones. So you can take your room with you anywhere you go. With your headphones, of course, because you have to get it measured with the headphones. And so there's working that way, you can tell, they're like Nikki was saying, you can't tell the room from the headphones. So now you have that room wherever you mix, and you can reference mixes in a pair of headphones, and you can mix in a pair of headphones. And so we did.
I want to shift the conversation a little bit because some people have very short memories. By a judge of hands, does anybody here remember working in Pro Tools early in the day? And when I mean early in the day, I want to talk about like 91, 92, 93, like early days. I see a few heads. All right. Now, there's a lot of these like conversations out there about, well, it's really hard, you know, Atmos, like it's this, and 360, it's that, you know, the workflow, does anybody remember what Pro Tools was like in 91, 92, 93, and 94? 95, 96, 97? It ain't gonna be perfect, guys. it's new software. We're creating for an entirely new audience with new speakers. And one of the things that Matt and I were talking about earlier was, geez, like you can hear immersive formats in all headphones. You already have 70% of the market consuming audio in headphones. You don't need to change how your Sonos is set up at home. You can just listen on headphones or in your Tesla car, or there's other places as well.
Yeah, I mean, I touched on this on yesterday's forum too. I think to your point, like immersive audio is definitely here. You can listen on headphones, cars, TV manufacturers are doing it. So like the immersive format is here to stay. The tools to make it will get better. They'll take creative inputs that that we creatives give them. It needs to be more like this. It needs to be more like that, and we'll get better. You guys will able to create all these amazing things, and the VME stuff. Again, if it can, right now it's not scalable to the public, but as creators you should get it, try it right now, and once it becomes scalable to the public, it's just going to be a game changer. It's just going to be like a no-brainer to listen to it in that way.
So we're gonna have 7 minutes left in this bad boy. I'm gonna ask everybody here sort of what's next, and then we're gonna open it up for questions. And if you guys don't have questions, I have plenty to say. So, and I know they do too. I'll plug tomorrow at 1:30. Rex Kudo, Brian Kennedy, Charles Jenkins, and Nephew are all going to be here. Same time, same place. We're going to touch on some other things around 360, immersive creator experience and what they're working on and what their experience was with it. But like, what's next? What do you guys want to see? What sort of, great, we're at NAMM, January 2024. Scott, what's the future right now for you in terms of recording? What are you looking forward to?
Well, that's a two-part question for me because creatively, what I'm looking forward to now is just approaching all of my initial concepts from an immersive standpoint because I think differently. It's the same way I did, years and years and years ago. Like he said, you get a piece of new technology, it just makes you think differently. And it opens up portals of creativity based on how you think. And so that's part one. Part two, I think I'm literally going to see music, all the music labels. They got one guy down the hall in a small office, and they're like, yeah, send that down to the immersive guy. Make sure that goes out to all the immersive mixers, and make sure we bundle that up as part of the thing. It's not going to be that. It's going to be the music labels are going to be doing immersive, and down the hall at the end of the hall is the legacy department where they hold all the stereo tracks at. So I think you're going to start seeing changes. That's what's going to come, and it all starts with you guys. It all starts with the disruptive creators who go out there and make this music and make it happen. And I said it again, or a while ago, I'm going to say it again. Now's the time. This is the turning point, and I've always tried to. My biggest successes were when I saw an opening where something didn't exist, or I can jump in on that, and that's how I found success. I see this happening again. I'm all over it. So pass it on.
The same? No. Yes, for me, a lot of it's just going to be integration with what you're working with. And I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the DAW side to make these sort of things work together. And what's the most seamless way to get to that world? And the software for this works fantastic. When you start, when you work in Atmos or something like that, you have all these. How do I say it? They're not really. What's the word? The controls aren't for everybody. So you don't want divergence. You want to see where you're placing that object. All of this stuff is object oriented. So you're placing objects everywhere in the 360 world, or in Atmos or something like that, the 180 world. And when you think in terms of objects, the DAWs need to integrate with that better.
Yeah, I mean, for me, as far as what's next is a couple things. discovering this software, and after we got back from the retreat, I'm in the 11th hour of mixing a record for myself that I'm getting ready to put out that has a lot of atmospheric elements to it, like bird sounds or noise from the streets outside or things like that. That's just making me want to go back and completely remix the entire project now with this in mind. So that's exciting to me. I'm just mixing all the projects that I'm working on right now with this in mind. And then going back to elsewhere and doing another trip, right? Let's go. I'm ready for it.
Yeah, more of the same. I'll touch on the live music experience. I'm a also avid concert goer. I'm expecting more, immersive concerts. That'll be a lot of fun to see if venues can invest in the equipment and everything. Kind of like what Scott was saying, I'm one of those Atmos mixers that labels send stuff when it's done. It's like we need the Atmos version. As I said before, like artists should create with immersive in mind, and then let that be the inception of it rather than me doing my thing. Which I mean, I still have fun doing it, but it's better when it's with the artist's intent from the start.
I love it. And for all you guys out there, when you go home to your partner in crime, your kids, and they're like, so, what was different about NAMM this year? Say, number one, as a musician, a producer, I've got hope. Immersive ain't going anywhere. We're digging our fingernails into it because, guys, this is the most exciting time in the music business. You can cut through the noise. You can be one of the first 30,000 songs right now in 360. I don't know how many there are in Atmos, but Apple is requiring everybody to turn in Atmos mixes, so that should say something.
Can I say something about mixing?
Yeah.
So one of the issues with Apple, if I may, is that Apple does the binaural encoding that you don't get to hear until it's released. So one thing that's nice about this is you hear what it's going to sound like. You can approve the final mix, whereas the others, well, not all the others, but the Apple one, they're doing the encoding. So you do the Atmos mix, you hear it in speakers, that's great. You can hear the Atmos binaural, but once it gets to iTunes, the binaural is generated by Apple, and you don't hear it until it's released.
And in defense of Atmos, I mean, they've been at it for 14 years, so they've had to iterate on something that had originated 14 years ago, whereas
It's a film format.
Yeah, it's a film format. So we love Atmos. We love all immersive formats because they're creating the industry that we're talking about right now. So most important, anyone that has any questions, I would say we're kind of experts. I dream in immersive, so if you're not dreaming in immersive, it's time to start. Anyone
Mert's
got
the expert.
any questions?
I'm
Yeah,
just faking.
Matt, why don't you come up here? It's just easier for the mic.
So my question is, like when I first heard immersive audio, is that close enough? At Vintage King, I was sold right away. So I would just go over there and hang out in their little Atmos room. But my problem was, I can't afford an Atmos setup. So what's the quickest way or easiest way, cheapest way that I can start, making music in 360?
I look 7 feet to my right, and we have what's called we can measure you for VME. And if you pick up the headphones with your actual software that we create in there, you can literally start mixing in your headphones based on the measurement that you're doing right there, seven steps away from here. You can mix in your headphones. You don't need 13.2.
That's what I'm
Go
talking
ahead,
about. They put the
Lumpy.
babble fish in your ear, and they measure you in the room with the speakers. Then you take the headphones that they measure you with as well as the speakers, and now you have that room in your headphones, and you can mix on your headphones in that way. And yeah, and for Vintage King, hey, Neuro Brothers, I've known those guys forever.
You can start today.
Yeah.
You just need the headphones. Matt, we'll get you signed up right now. Anybody else? Rob's ready too. Rob, do you have a question or are you just following Matt? Oh, that's good. Anybody else want to follow Rob and Matt? Well, without further ado, I presume, does anybody else have anything left to say? We've gone over, I know, but important stuff going on here. All right, so I'd like to thank Scott from coming up from San Diego, Blumpy from Vegas, Nikki from Palm Springs, Joshua Tree, and I mean, Matt, kind of Turkey, but also LA. So, and we'll see you guys hopefully tomorrow at 1:30. Honored to hang.